welcome to this tutorial on Chordio version 1.5. First off, sorry for the somewhat shady sound quality. I have kids up and about, so there's some ninja cartoons going on in the background, but I have limited options when to do these things, so bear with me. Also want to point out the awesome music you just heard in the intro sequence made by my absolute favorite musician on the planet. Thanks a lot. Really excited that he helped out making a song for my YouTube channel. All right, the script. I won't go into too much detail on the differences between the old version and the newer version. I might touch on it a little bit, but I'll just go through it from the basics to operation, and I'll leave the most advanced stuff for a later tutorial, stuff like smart controls and external controller mapping, etc. This will be basically to be up and running and using it. First off, to install the script, if you've never used Scripter before, you'll basically open this the Scripter plugin, and whatever code you have in there from the default script, just erase it and paste the contents of the script you want to use, in this case Chordio. Okay, once you've done that, don't hit run script quite yet, because there are some settings that you have to configure within the script editor before using it. And in Chordio, these are the mode. Danny mode is basically a one chord menu mode, so there's no key switching going on. And from the feedback I've been getting, I think most of you guys and girls want to use this mode. So it's just one menu for all the chords and all the settings. If you set Danny mode to 0, then you'll have to enter either the note number or the name. I've explained this in more detail here in the... No, I haven't, sorry. In the user guide, I mean, it's explained. You either input the name together with this function, or you just input the note number. The total number of key switches you want, and the last setting is whether to add, apart from chords, you have the choice to add scales. I'll explain this a little bit more later. There's quite a lot of scales, so if you want to use smart controls, etc., I'd advise against setting this to true. Just set it to false, but I'll show you what it does in a little while, and you can choose for yourself. Other than these settings, you really don't have to change anything in the script. You can change some stuff. Well, the one thing I wouldn't mind if you changed was if you want to add your own chords or remove some of the chords that you know you'll never use. I mean, there are quite a few in here which are there mainly for the sake of being there, for the list to be complete, but they're not very usable, to be honest. So you can jerk around with make chords stuff. Okay, once you've set your settings up, I'm gonna start off showing you this in Danny mode. Danny, by the way, is from Danny J. Lewis over at Music Production Tutorials. I decided to call this Danny mode because most of you have seen the video where he shows Chordio, and he's actually in automation mode there, and it's not working 100%, so I've skipped automation mode now, made Danny mode, and I made it work the way I think he wanted it to work in the video, or wished it would have worked. Okay, so then we hit run script. Once you hit run script, you can either close the editor or you can leave it open with the console log showing, because okay, now they're singing in the background as well. Sorry about that. It's quite lovely though. In here you'll see some information regarding what's going on with the script. So if I change a chord here, it's traced. So yeah, it's not super useful, but it's interesting to see what's going on. Also, if I play a chord, the console traces what I'm actually playing, or not what I'm playing, but what is output by the script. Okay, so then you have your interface settings. Regardless if you're in Danny mode or if you're in standard mode with several menus like this, you will have one bass note for the. So I put the bass note before the chord and the Flam setting after it. And if you have 5 or 6 key switches or however many, you will have, this chunk of 3 settings for each key switch. In Danny mode, you just have one, and you can actually forget what it says here. I might even remove it for the Danny mode so you don't get confused. This is just basically the menu monopolizes one note. So if you're in Danny mode, you won't be able to play C-2, which I'm sure is your favorite note to play. But I'll remove this for the live version. So you set your bass note here, okay? If you set it to 0, it's basically redundant. The 0 is the only setting that doesn't generate an extra bass note. Okay, but if you set it to anything other than 0, you will. There's quite a lot of singing going on in the background. Okay, it's the Backyardigans. Pretty awesome show. So if you set it to anything else than 0, you will trigger an additional bass note for the chord in the menu. So this is highly unrecommended. The -1 bass note sounds pretty caca. But if you press Alt and click on there, you get the default setting to -12, which will give you a bass note 1 octave down from whatever trigger note you're playing on the keyboard. Sounds better, right? Next setting, the chord. I've tried to come up with a reasonable sort of order for these, failed utterly. So they are basically in alphabetic order, except for these very funky chords, which I've put last. Like this one is from an opera, I think. So is this Ode to Napoleon hexachord is from an opera, I believe. These things sound best when arpeggiated, to be honest. That's the sort of effect you want to be after. Okay. The next setting is the Flam in milliseconds. Reason why it's in milliseconds and not something else because in combination with the Humanized Flam and the Humanized velocity setting, it's easier to get a real nice sort of organic sound in milliseconds than if I would have put, beats or divisions or something in here. So it's a more seamless setting. You can get a more real live sound. Now I've set this tutorial up with an upright piano. I found that this works best with pianos, clavs, organs to some extent, and some synths, but piano is probably the best output for Chordio. Okay, before we move on, I just gonna come back to this with this thing with the scales that I've added. Actually, based on a suggestion from one of the Chordio owners and the request for a function, I came up with the idea to add not only chords but also to add scales from another script which I'm working on. That script will be like a mirror of Chordio but for melodies. Now I already had all the scales set up for that, so I just transferred the framework of the scales into this. So the scales will only sound good if you arpeggiate them, obviously, but you can get some real funky stuff with the scales going on. A lot of Indian scales. I think, and obviously I haven't double-checked every single scale that it's correct, but I've used a scientific database for all the known scales that have a name or a reference somewhere. So this is basically every not every possible scale, but every used scale. There are theoretical scales that aren't in here. So let's try an Indian scale with some arpeggiation, and you'll see what I mean. Okay. Note the handy kill the noise button. I'll go into that soon. Okay, Humanized Flam. What has changed from before is that you can't go up to 100% because it was totally useless. I think, in my opinion, anything above 15% is close to useless. It becomes so untight that it's painful for the ears. So if I just hit play here. Listen, if I it becomes a really shitty piano player real fast. Sorry, a really bad piano player real fast. Okay, so let's kill that. But you get the point. You can arpeggiate a lot of fun scales. I'm sure you can find something in here that that's inspiring or triggers some cool ideas. And don't be put off by all these weird names. A lot of them sound really, really good. So give it a try. Okay, Humanized Flam I just sort of covered. Basically at 0 you won't get any any offset in this Flam value between notes, and the bigger you set this, the bigger the random offset will be. So there will be some notes that are 130 apart, some that are 150 apart, etc. Humanized velocity, pretty much the same thing. It takes the velocity from your trigger note. So if I press the F key here, it takes that note's velocity, and at 0% it uses that velocity for every single note in the chord generated. Okay. And if I put this at 50, you will hear some difference, I think. Oops, I hit too many notes there at once. Yeah, and one thing I was going to say, it's really hard to code past one thing. This script is really intended for you to play one note at a time. I mean, you usually don't play 2 or 3 chords on top of each other on the same instrument. And it's the same thing here. So if you as long as you play one note at a time, it has really no trouble keeping up with the notes that are generated. But if you, like I just did, accidentally hit 2 notes at the same time, or especially right next to each other, it has a tendency to sort of lose track of what's going on. Or even if you press the same note really fast twice, there's a pretty good chance that it's not going to send enough note offs for all the notes. So for that eventuality, there's the "oh my god, kill the noise" button here. It's basically sending a MIDI all notes off instead of you having to sort of stop and restart the script. Next setting, ARPs and abruptly or ring out. If you set it to abruptly, which I think is the more useful setting, as soon as you release your trigger note, your arpeggio dies. Given that all the notes have been sent already, if you let go before all the notes for the arpeggio are generated, that's not going to really work. You see, now I released before all the notes were generated. So for that eventuality also, "oh my god, kill the noise" is pretty useful. But I mean, if you use it like a normal sane person, let go and it dies. Whether if I change the ring out, well, you're not seeing what I'm doing now, but I let go quite some time before the arpeggio ended. Okay, so I've set up just a couple of random single notes. Let's call these trigger notes, the ones you see in the piano, the ones you see in the piano roll here. And now I've set the script up so as soon as you change something, it's gonna sort of register and be the setting. You don't have to trigger it with a key or something like before. But if you're doing it live, some stuff is difficult to time correctly. For instance, the bass note, you have to time it right for it to work totally glitchlessly. And now I'm strictly talking about using it live. You can mess around with all the settings, and while your loop is running. And also you can automate all of this. If you press A, if you press A on your keyboard, you'll get the automation view, and if you go to scripter, you can automate which chords are sent at where. So let's say I want to add a different chord for each of these notes. It should work. I'm gonna expand my view a little bit so I see that I'm not timing it badly, because it's not a super great idea to change chords mid-note, because then you will confuse the hell out of the script. It will send note-ons for one chord and send note-offs for another, so it's probably not going to work great. Let's see if this works. Might actually not, I'm not sure. This is maybe not the coolest loop ever, but you get the point. You can automate the chords that are being played. You can also, of course, automate stuff like the Flam. I'm no expert at automation, to be honest, so there's probably an easier way to do this, but let's just try the two first ones there. Did I actually change the... I'm sorry, I'm on the Humanized Flam. Just a sec. Delete visible automation, okay? Go. Flam, that's the setting I was looking for. So we'll have 104 milliseconds there, then we'll change it to 256, and then change it back to... Let's see if this works. Okay, if we were to sort of zoom in a little and do this properly, it would work, I assure you. Probably changing this Flam setting mid-note. That's also, again, the same thing as with the chords. It's not a great idea to change the setting mid-note. Try to make the changes sort of between the notes, in the spaces in between. But it should work pretty... And you probably are not going to want to have these huge changes anyway, but just to illustrate the point, you can automate most of this. What else? That's pretty much it regarding the basics of the script. Now, if you want automation to be a little bit more easy to overview, especially the choice of the chords, I'd recommend that you set the add scale setting to to false here, so you have somewhat a somewhat thinner list of chords here, and it's much easier to pick the one you want in the menu. Yeah, okay, we're sort of done. I'll just show you the not Danny mode setting, the standard key switch setting. If I hit run script here, now instead of having just one menu, I'll have, in this case, 3 key switches. And everything works the same as in Danny mode, except for the fact that you can also change which of these menus is active by pressing the corresponding note on your keyboard. So if I were to delete all automation on this track, let me see if I can find it. Okay. Let's change to a less disgusting chord before we move on. This one is nice. Okay, I put that one on C2. I'll put something else nice on the so what chord is pretty nice, and let's put one more chord on. Let's put a major at 9th chord. Okay. So I'll keep the console log open here so you see what keys I'm pressing. Sorry, see what keys I'm pressing while I'm playing the loop. Okay, so now the loop is playing. Right now the C2 key switch is active. Now I pressed C sharp 2. Now I'm pressing D2. Sharp 2, C2, and of course I can have different settings for the Flam and the relative bass note here, but I think you get the point. Yeah, that's about it for the basic tutorial for Chordio 1.5. As I said, I'll just make some last-second adjustments to stuff that are bugging me, like this display of the note name and Danny mode, etc. And I'll make it available to all you guys out there who already have Chordio. I'll ship it out with your user ID, your unique ID, etc. as soon as I get the chance. And for those of you who are watching who haven't got it yet, you'll get the new version straight off the bat. There was something else I was going to say, but I've totally forgotten now. So thanks for watching, and thanks for caring and using the script. I'm really happy for all the awesome feedback I've been getting, and it's also great with criticism and suggestions. Keep it coming. I'll try to implement as much of the ideas as I can, bearing in mind that Scripter is pretty limited, to be honest, but a lot of stuff can be done if you have the imagination and if you're stubborn enough. Stuff that might be showing up in future updates is probably a way to actually not generate chords, but to sort of apply humanized Flam, humanized velocity, and Flam to a chord that you're playing on the keyboard. That's an idea from Gareth, one of the users of Chordio. What else? I have some ideas. You know what? I'll keep them to myself for now, because I'm just not great at expressing myself right now. Okay. Thanks for watching, and spread the word. Make sure your friends come by the site and buy this as well, so I can feed my singing kid in the background. Thanks. Bye-bye.